Hello and welcome to the SSQ podcast. I'm your host, Ben Quarry, and today I'm joined by Poppy Taylor from our in-house team and Isobel Lovell from our Interims team. Welcome.
Hi, nice to be here.
Yeah, exciting.
Thanks for joining today. So, in a previous episode, we spoke to Valentina about what the private practice or PPA team does. Obviously, that is only one part of what we do here at SSQ in London. We obviously, from the in-house and interims team, two other crucial parts of the services that we're providing lawyers, the types of opportunities we do. So, I guess, Poppy, to start with you, the in-house team, talk to me about in terms of what you guys do, where your focus in the market is, examples of the client. Just give us a little sort of idea of what your day-to-day is like in terms of who you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose in terms of the in-house team, we cover a huge number of sectors, and like the in-house legal market more generally, we are very broad in what we do. So we cover roles from group general counsels all the way down to junior lawyers. One of the key differences is that we don't do as many NQ and early solicitors, as it's just not as common in an in-house team. And then in terms of sectors, I myself cover financial services with my colleague Laura Field. And then we have a C&I team who cover things like energy and retail and pharmaceutical companies. So we're split by sector, which means we're able to really specialise in the areas that we work in. And we work roles at all levels with our clients. So I would work, as many 4 PQE roles as I do general counsel positions. Very similarly to how the PPA team work.
Perfect. And Izzy, obviously, interim team, you wear lots of different hats at different points. Talk to me a little bit about what you guys do.
So similar in the aspect is that we also cover all different types of sectors. So anything from like roofing companies to retailers. And what we do is we provide lawyers on a fixed term contract or temporary day hourly rate basis. So it's kind of split between more project work where we'd have like a team of people that go in, say the company's looking to launch an IPO, for example, or fixed term contract where it's more like BAU work, maternity covers, that type of thing.
And that covers both in-house and private practice, right?
Correct. Yeah. In private practice, we probably see more of like the larger projects as we do on the in-house side. But we have been working on some quite exciting stuff over the past couple of years from businesses that, they're moving into a new entity, for example, and they'll need some legal support to come in for, a certain period of time to alleviate that pressure off the existing legal counsel that are working internally.
Nice. And obviously appreciate that the role of what the interims team covers has changed quite a bit over the years in terms of, I know certainly when I first joined the company 7-8 years ago, there was a lot more focus on paralegals, doc reviewers. There was a certain part of the market. Now it's a much more sophisticated offering, right, in terms of the levels of seniority. You get some very, very senior people coming to you, sometimes ex-partners who perhaps are after something a little bit different. What's your sort of, I guess, the range of the types of people rather you're talking to? What do you typically see?
I would say that typically the type of role that we get in on the in-house side of things tends to be a client coming to me saying they need a safe pair of hands. We're super busy at the moment. Someone may be going on maternity leave, and that person coming in could be 15, 20 years PQE that, are happy to come in and, technically do the work that I guess somebody 6, 7, 8 years PQE could do, but wouldn't be immediately available in order to be doing contract work. Whereas we find the more senior end of the market, they're just at that stage of their careers where they're looking for that flexibility. It can work really well with these businesses because they know what they're doing. They've got plenty of experience, and they're also quite used to just coming in and parachuting themselves into that role and getting it done to a deadline and then moving on to the next assignment. I suppose we have been fairly busy with like more senior positions, even like interim GC work we've worked on. But I would say like the vast majority of mandates that we get in is that senior safe pair of hands, especially on like the commercial corporate side when it comes to in-house.
And so presumably you then have relationships with these people who they're choosing to go in to do FTCs because it suits their lifestyle, their career, whatever stage they're at. Presumably you're getting to know these people pretty well. You're working with them on over and over again.
Definitely. I've been doing this market for over 10 years now, so it's actually been really nice to know the candidates really well. Kind of some candidates I've placed like 5-6 times, on various assignments, and you get to know them really well. And also when you're dealing with clients, is that you're giving them that kind of reference on somebody that firsthand how they work, who they're going to work well with. And even if we're putting teams in to work, we know who works well together on different projects, etc. So we're quite a good way of, if there's a deadline or there's a big project and there's a lot of pressure on the team to get that done, it can definitely help them.
Who to pick up the bat phone to.
Yeah, exactly, which is good. And I feel like the longer you've been in the market, the more you know and the more you get to know these individuals as well, of where their strengths lie.
Nice. And Poppy, you mentioned, so the junior end, there's not as much that goes on the in-house side of things. And it tends to be when you've had a little bit more experience that market opens up. On the private practice side of things, we obviously get asked a lot by people who are in private practice, when is the right time to move in-house? And I appreciate, in theory, you can move at any point, right?
Absolutely.
But in terms of kind of when you would say, if we're talking to someone who, is in private practice right now, is thinking that long term I probably want to move in-house, but I just want to know when is the right time to start talking to people like yourself. When would you say the best time to do that would be?
I think it's good to keep your options open, even as someone that's a bit more junior. There is absolutely no right time to move in-house, and it will be so dependent on a personal circumstance. But where the jobs are and the majority of the live roles, they probably sit between 4 PQE and 11 and 12 PQE, and even more so between, let's say, 4 and 8. It can be slightly more difficult if you're a very senior lawyer to make that first move in-house.
And why is that?
Because you don't have as much internal in-house experience, and the role is slightly different. It encompasses more, you're part of a business, and having that in-house exposure can be quite relevant when somebody is hiring a head of legal or a general counsel. So if you don't have that secondment experience, you are much more likely to lose that role to somebody who's making a lateral move from a competitor, let's say.
And so I guess having, if someone's thinking about in-house on a slightly longer term basis, if they get the opportunity to do a secondment for 3-6 months with a client, gold dust?
Do it.
Take
that by the,
try
take that
before you buy.
Yes, because you'll know if you like it, but also if you go into an interview, it's very easy to ask somebody the question, why would you want to move in-house? And without an answer that's good enough, and not just, I'm working crazy hours, and, you want a tangible reason. And if you've been there and you have had a secondment and you enjoyed it, the employer also gets to feel as though you're very confident you know what you want. So always take that secondment if you're offered. Because
you're right, it's a very different way of working, right? You are part of the business. You are in a law firm, you are a revenue generator. You are generating money for the law firm, hopefully if you're doing your job right. Whereas, in-house, you are actually every piece of work you're doing, you hopefully saving the money, making sure that they're doing the right things and they're saying the right side of what they want to. But it's a different mindset, isn't it? And so, do you find once someone makes that move, and we can talk in a second about, or further down the line about, what options are open to people when, and what routes are their routes back and things like that. But do you find that when someone makes the move in-house, they tend to stay in-house sort of going forwards, or do you find people who think, actually, you know what, I've tried it,
and
it's
hours,
different. We like to say the cut and thrust of private practice. But.
No, it's very rare for people to move back. If they do, potentially it's for a project or to do something else. Or some people move back for partnerships, but it is very rare to make that transition back into private practice. Overall, you see more of a business. You're part of something that's happening end to end. You do tend to have a bit of a better work-life balance. And there is, despite the rumours, a lot of progression opportunities and, still decent salaries in-house. So there are lots of positives to keep people staying.
Nice. And in terms of practice areas, obviously, I appreciate different practice areas will find it slightly easier or slightly tougher to make that move from private practice to in-house.
Yes.
Talk to me about who will find it easiest, who perhaps are going to find it slightly trickier. And I guess with the latter, is there anything they can be doing in order to try and, if they take a practice area like disputes, for example, I appreciate there are more limited opportunities if you're a litigator in private practice to pivot in-house. There are always opportunities, as you say. But how might someone go about setting themselves up for that transition if they are in that sort of area? And I guess who finds it easiest to make the move over?
Well, who finds it easiest? There are lots of different areas of law and specialties, but the majority of the roles that we work will be corporate, commercial, financial services, those sorts of areas, like employment.
Yeah.
The dispute side of things can be relatively limited. Not many companies have in-house litigation teams and dispute teams. And the same goes for things like leverage finance. If it's very, very specific, then it can be slightly more difficult. But what you can do is if you really want to move in-house, you can try and get the broadest role that you have and that you can. And maybe that means you need to make a lateral move in private practice to a smaller team where you're involved in more end-to-end project work.
Yeah.
Or maybe you need to, evaluate where you are. But it's never going to be impossible.
Yeah.
There are just easier areas to move in. And those are the kind of classics that everybody would know about, I guess.
I guess, Izzy, in terms of kind of coming back to the interims market and sort of what people might be doing. So a typical project, how long would you say? I appreciate probably how long is a piece of string, right? But the shortest to the longest, what sort of would you typically expect to see in terms of the range of what your guys are doing?
So I suppose on the project side of things, it's quite good because the thing is with interim, it gives clients so much flexibility. So typically when you get these projects, it's actually quite difficult to know how long that this is going to be wrapped up by, and they'll need people to be flexible essentially. So what tends to happen is that they'll be put on either a 1-month contract, a 3-month contract, and they'll be paid on a daily rate through us. And there's just a lot of movement you can do with that kind of setup of contract, that if they need to be extended, we can extend by any kind of amount of time. Usually what we see is they'll start a project for 3 months and then it will be extended monthly rolling until things have come to an end. But there's quite a bit of transparency in terms of, the candidate and the client. I mean, the candidates know they're working on the project. Yeah. They're quite well aware of how long that's...
Where they are in the process.
It's not got a mystery end.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not like they're in the dark on that. On the project side, that's more the case. And on the other side, if we're looking at fixed term contracts, now we do see a lot of maternity covers. Yeah. So typically we're looking at 6, 9, 12 months. Okay. And again, sometimes I suppose a year is actually quite a long time. If they like the person and they've been in that post for 12 months, something else might have come up. There might be a different project that they can jump onto, for example. And again, a lot of the time, they'd actually be taken permanently.
That was going to be my question. How often do you see something start?
Quite often.
Really?
I mean, I know there's always that hesitation with candidates to go into maternity cover contracts because they're like, the person's always going to come back, and the likelihood of that being extended sounds quite slim. But I would say, and I've seen this time and time again, 12 months is quite a long time. They're probably going to be in their next round of recruitment at that point. And if they're really good and they get on with the team and, they're putting in a lot of work, the company's doing well, they want to expand, there's a really strong business case there for, them to be made a permanent offer and a permanent member of staff. So, we do see that very often.
And that's at no detriment to the person coming back on maternity leave,
Of course. Yes, that's the caveat.
And a question to both of you. One thing we see a lot of in the London market is people coming over from overseas, whether it be from all over, right? But obviously we often see a lot of people coming from Australia, people coming from New Zealand, and certainly in the world of private practice, when people are looking to break into the London market, the 3 obstacles, should we say, that very often are sort of in front of people are the lack of UK qualification, the lack of London market experience, and normally a requirement of some sort for a visa, right? And the qualification depends on the area, depends on the practice area, depends what they do. Sometimes it's important, and depends where they're coming from, what their experience before. Sometimes you can get away with it, right? The London market experience, you've got a little bit of a chicken and egg problem of, if I need London market experience to get a role in London, how do I get that in the first place? It's a bit of a circular argument, right? And the visa, again, depending on where they come from, in private practice, on the permanent side at least, it's pretty easy to kind of get around. Is it? I know in the interims market, for example,
it lends
there are
itself so nicely to candidates that are coming from overseas. I mean, mainly, as you said, with the visa, I think that's just been extended to 3 years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It used to be 2 years. So, yeah, I mean, it's ideal. They're on the ground at short notice. Their availability is really good. And it's just that level of experience as well. I mean, typically a lot of lawyers that are coming from Australia and New Zealand, I'd say like a lot of them would have between like 3 to 6 years PQE that they want to come here and get some experience. Now that in the English qualified market, that's really difficult to find at that level because typically those candidates are in permanent roles. I mean, the markets hasn't been that bad, where there hasn't been the work for candidates at that level. So it works really nicely because those teams where I mentioned senior candidates before, but, they just need somebody coming in and helping out with the commercial contract churn. It's not super complex work. And, somebody from Australia and New Zealand can come in, start the role at short notice and just be at a really good level to do that and be happy doing that type of work and gaining that London experience.
Well, exactly. I mean,
it works really nicely both ways.
We often dovetail with your team very, very nicely where we have someone and, the pushback they're getting is the CV looks great, but you're being pipped at the post by people with that experience, right? And, if they can get 6 months of experience through one of your roles, obviously there's the opportunity that might go permanent, in which case actually maybe it's a very happy landing point to begin with. But equally, if it then means that in 6 months' time they come back to the perm side and say, right, now I've got this experience, I'm more established in London, I'm here for the long run. It gets it that bit easier to then kind of pivot into a permanent role elsewhere if they decide to do that. But equally, also very often some people like the flexibility.
Well, of course,
they like the idea that they can work on a project, earn a bit of cash, and then go and do something else for a little bit and come back when it suits them, right?
And the thing is, a lot of clients as well, I mean, when they've got a project coming up that's, imminently starting, they don't really have the time to run a permanent process. They don't have time to wait for 1 month notice periods. They need people that are available to start in the next few weeks.
Oh, really? So what's the time frame? So you get an instruction today. When ideally would they want someone to start? Is it a next week? Is it a next month? Is it
it really does vary. It has happened like quite a few times. I had a instruction, was it on last Wednesday, and they started on Monday. So
wow, okay,
literally
fine.
like a three working day lead up time for that certain project, and that was 3 individuals as well. So it can be super tight time frame. Or if it's a maternity cover contract, a lot of the time they'll have the heads up on that, and it could be a month or so. And that's when they could actually wait for a little bit of a notice period, because even contractors will sometimes have a notice period if they're in a 6-month contract, for example. But it completely depends on what the need is, how quickly the client wants to move. And as I said, a lot of the time they don't really have time to wait for those notice periods. And also it's a big commitment hiring on the permanent side. They want to make sure they're vetting that person and interviewing them and having 2-3 interviews with that individual, having them come into the office, have them meet the team. With the interim, they have a little bit more flexibility on that because they're only committing to a certain period of time. And a lot of the time it works really well, and that person's a great fit, and then they'll be offered a permanent role within the company. So we do see that quite often.
Nice. And Poppy, what about the in-house side of things? Overseas qualified lawyers, is it easy for them to find roles in-house? Is it better for them to kind of do something, whether it be through interims or the sort of private practice market first? What's sort of the reaction when you have people coming over in terms of kind of the appetite? I appreciate it's a different need when it's in-house legal versus a law firm environment.
It is, and it can be relatively difficult to find companies that will sponsor.
Okay.
The reason being there is a huge appetite in the market all of the time to hire somebody long term, but also to find someone with the right experience. And there's a lot of appetite from private practice lawyers to move in-house. So if you have somebody that's going to require sponsorship from day one or even in 2 years' time, and there's several people who have a very similar UK experience, much like you said, they get pipped to the post and it's a bit difficult. If they come out of an interim contract and they've got a bit of that experience, they are more likely to secure that permanent in-house role. But it can be relatively difficult. So larger companies like financial services or a PLC are able to potentially sponsor more often.
Okay.
But it can be difficult. There are certain jurisdictions where it is easier. If you have a US qualification, or Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, they are similar jurisdictions. So we do find it easier, and people are less worried about them being UK qualified, I would say. And they do tend to usually have the ability to stay without a visa for a significant period of time, which I guess is a tester. So you can keep them until their visa runs out and then make that decision whether they want to return or not.
Yeah.
But the appetite for overseas lawyers to move in-house it's very big, because you rarely move to a country to work every hour under the sun, and having your evenings and your weekends and your annual leave to take is kind of the point, to enjoy the country and the access to Europe.
You can tell which team you're supporting here.
I like to think I make people's dreams come true.
But no, look, it's been really nice to chat to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
I hope you'll both join us again in the future for another episode, and we can talk through
We may.
everything and anything in-house and interims.
Awesome.
It was lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.